Alright, good morning. I'm about to do my first oil change at 1,000 miles, and just want to talk a little bit about the preference of oil that I chose. Now, I've been a big fan of Amsoil for a long time, and I'll tell you why. They originally started with working on farming equipment, so like tractors and things like that. But their main intent was to make long-lasting oil, because a lot of these guys, they have farming equipment, heavy-duty stuff. They'd run for hundreds of thousands of hours at a time, right? So they needed something that was, one, durable, but two, protects it. So Amsoil has been their #1 choice for a long time. And then eventually, if you're not familiar with Amsoil, you can't buy this over the counter. You have to go on their website, order direct, and then they have suppliers that send it out to you. But honestly, it speaks for itself. They don't really need to sell it on over the counter. There's been plenty of reviews on Amsoil itself. I won't get into the details of that, but honestly, this is my oil of choice, and I've used it in all my cars. I've used it in all my daily drivers. I've used it in all my track cars, and I'm going to go ahead and use this in the new Trueno right now. About to head out in a bit and go and add this in. But a few reasons. They actually designed their filters to filtrate really well. Now, I'm not saying that OEM isn't any good. OEM filters are actually really good. They're probably one of the best you can get. But the one little advantage that Amsoil has is oil flow. So if you're, and I'm sure you understand this, if you build engines, you're in the racing and stuff like that, oil flow is very important. And so here's a little bit of why I chose this particular oil. For some of you guys, you might have done a little bit of research. You might have heard of some rumors that these FA engines tend to blow up. So here's the reason. Yes and no. It's not 100% factual, because there isn't a whole lot of I think the understanding and information and knowledge isn't there. So here's what this is about. The oil from factory is a 0W20. It's a very thin oil. Now, there's nothing wrong with this oil. It's great for efficiency, it's great for economy, and it lasts you a good amount of time as long as you take care of the car. But it's meant for everyday scenarios, you know, daily driving, city driving, you know, commuting, things like that. Any intentions to drive this car in the manner of whether it's spirited driving, a little bit more aggressive, you know, it's a sports car. We're all going to do it at some point. I've actually discovered a manual that was written by Subaru themselves in Japanese, but it was translated in English, and this is what I discovered. 020 is okay for regular driving. If you're gonna do any kind of spirited driving, at least bump up to a 30 weight, at least. And then if you intend to drive it hard, you're gonna start modifying the car, you wanna drive it on the track, any extreme conditions, they recommend that you go to a 40 weight. So I like to drive my cars in the way that I thought this car is intended, so I chose a 40 weight. Now, the two numbers here, obviously there's a lot of information on the internet about this. I'm not really trying to reinvent the wheel, but the first number of this here stands for the cold number. So this is your viscosity when cold. The lower the number, the better the flow. Second number is the viscosity when it's at operating temperatures. Now, this is why this is also important. When you reach above something like 220 degrees of oil temperatures, now, most of you might not think of, well, when do I ever reach the temps? That's pretty common, actually. Especially, like, let's just say you're sitting in traffic, your temps can climb, and that's normal. Now, operating range is pretty high. Like, I would say once you get a little unsafe, it's probably closer to like 260 degrees. But honestly, you don't really see that in everyday scenarios. When you do start to see temperatures like this is on the track setting. So when you surpass the 220 degrees, roughly, you drop this number by 10. So your 020 factory oil drops to a 10 weight. If you're driving the hell of it on the track, you do not want that. That's why they recommend at least a 30. That way it drops down from a 30 to a 20 when you're in those high temp track scenarios. I like it to be in the safe range, which is a 30. Being in this shop, there's a lot of cool stuff that I just wanted to point out. Figured just do a little walk around. I got my car over there in the lift. Got a Subaru over here. I think this might be the Peanut Eye, is what they call it. Got a Corvette under here. Here's my buddy's Infiniti G20 race car. This thing's pretty sick. Got an old Datsun Z here. Looks like a G body Infiniti. Ooh, you got some cool stuff under here. Okay. Got somebody's FD with a wide body on it. Nice. I feel like this would be fun hitting some dunes or going off-road. Damn. Never been into off-roading just because it's a whole other budget and group of vehicles in itself, but I would definitely love to try it someday. Looks like we got a Q over there on the rack. We got one of their techs working on it right now. Another FD here. Now this thing is sweet. These little Mini Coopers, man. Such go-karts. And I've heard about them doing B swaps from Hondas. Oh my gosh. This thing must fly. If you don't know much about these, they didn't make a lot of power from stock. They were definitely well under 100 horsepower. But the car weighs close to nothing. So when you throw something like this that has double the horsepower, maybe more, it's definitely going to move. Oh, of course. You got a J swap in here. That's sick. Got a pretty sweet M5 here. You don't see many of these today. I've always wanted these. The 90s and 2000s M, they were just very unique cars at the time. M3s, the M5s, the M6s. I remember correctly, this one has a high revving V8. There could be, it's either V8 or V10, I don't remember. It kind of left my mind for a minute, but I know there was something special about this, and it's a manual. And of course, we got a Millennium Jade R35 over here. Pretty sweet. I love this color. It's beautiful. You don't see too many of these. We got some go-karts and bikes over here. It's pretty sweet. Ooh, got a little Teggy over here, okay. Little DC5 chassis. Got a FRS over here. Looks like an Evo 9 back there. My buddy Martin has his B14 under the cover. He's doing a crazy turbo build that's been ongoing for some years. But I remember seeing that car back in the day. Pretty sweet. I hope to see it on the road someday. It's another M3, another M car, but M3. And a Z32, 300Z. yeah, these are all customer cars, so I think it's pretty cool that they have a wide variety of different things, as you can tell. Alright, so got the car on the lift. I'm over here at MotoIQ, and if you haven't heard of them before, they are I would say it's a well-known group of enthusiasts that started a shop. They started a business, but they've done everything from articles to vlogs to you name it, but they cover everything from everyday performance cars to track builds. And I actually knew of one of my buddies that started. He was one of the few guys that founded MotoIQ. His name is Martin, and we connected recently, but just kind of always been in touch over the years through social media. Back in the day when I had my B13 91 Nissan Sentra SER. we were a bunch of Sentra heads, SR20s and all. But anyway, so here I am, finally made it to MotoIQ, and I'm gonna get into why. There's another part I talked about the oil, why I chose Amsoil, why I chose the 040, but there's another reason as to why I did it. So some of you do remember or have, if you've seen it, if you've read it, and you're familiar, people have talked about the FA engines blowing up on high G turns, like on the track, pulling a lot of G's. So here's the other part of that. So yes, viscosity has some part of it, but the most important part of it has to do with oil level. So these boxer engines, they actually fill up to 5.3 quarts, if I'm not mistaken, or right around there. So when you're taking hard G's in the turn, you tend to imagine sloshing of oil, right? You take a turn hard, making a right or a left, your oil is going to slosh one way or another inside the block, the oil pan, right, if you will. Now, what the problem was is that based on the design of the pickup and design of the size, the capacity of all that, of the oil pan and the shape, there is a moment, there's a slight chance, like a 5% chance, that it will slosh in such a way to where the oil does not pick up anymore. So in that scenario, if you even have a moment of oil starvation, that could mean engine boom and you're in trouble. And a lot of money spent. So to prevent that, instead of just filling it up to the 5.3, we're going to fill it up, because I got 6 quarts, we're just going to fill it all the way up to 6 quarts. And no, it doesn't harm the engine. Adding a little bit more is fine, but the biggest part of that is now that you have that extra bit of oil in there, when you're taking those hard G's, you will no longer have any potential of oil starvation. So any of you guys or girls that are out there that own these GR cars, or even the previous gen BRZ or FRS or 86, just keep that in mind. So now that we're under this car, I just kind of want to I wanted to focus in on, I don't know if you've noticed, but you can see how flat this bottom is. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because this design, this car in particular, they spent a lot of R&D trying to make sure that there is under aero. And what I mean by that is you can see how all these flat surfaces are going down the left side and the right side. There can be, so when you're going through, just imagine you're in a wind tunnel, you're just driving down the road, right? There's wind that hits your car, and it goes over the car, around the car, and underneath the car. Now, there is something called turbulent air. And for a lot of these hardcore track goers, as much as an importance it is to have aerodynamics up top with your wing and the splitters and all that, it is equally as important to have these surfaces to be deflecting the air as well. So if you have uneven surfaces, rough surfaces, like some of these older cars do, you get turbulent air. And that actually does disrupt how it cuts through. So if you have turbulent air, you're creating air resistance. That means you're slowing the car down. If you're in racing, you do not want to slow the car in any way, shape, or form. So doing things like this, flattening the surface, is crucial to making the car as efficient as possible. The fact that they did this from factory, I'm geeking out over. I think this is awesome. Now the previous gen didn't do this as much, so that's what I wanted to point out with these GR and BRZs, is that this second gen focused in on under aero. So you can even see back there where that panel is flat, right where we're draining the oil from. That's all intentional. So all of this design for it to be flat underneath is intentional. Now since we're under here, it's a good time to kind of take a look at these different components, like the exhaust. I'm just seeing this for the first time. The suspension. We got your sway bar here. Now, this car in particular came with Sachs suspension, tuned by them, and I haven't driven a stock premium yet, but if I had to guess, it's probably a little bit more fine-tuned for track. I know it's a little hard to see there, but you can see the brakes over there. See all those little components. I'm just about done here. But again, just kind of want to focus in on all that paneling, right? That's really what I wanted to focus on under here. But also, this is my first time looking underneath this car. I thought it would be pretty cool to check it out. I think while I have this up, I just kind of want to focus in on the body lines. Body lines are not just for style. I mean, yes, that's a big part of it, styling, but a lot of this has functional components. Like you can see, you got these slits here, but they actually channel air. And where it puts it out is on the other end of the fender, right where the wheel is, so that if you're taking a turn and you had air traveling towards the brake, for example, if you're making a left turn, you get additional air flowing into that. It actually has a function, right? Just like this grill here. Yeah, half of it is blocked, but the other portion, this bottom portion right here, is all for air. It's all airflow. And you can see how there's that underbody aero, the flat panels like I mentioned earlier, all functional, all serve a purpose, right? Even this little vent right here, that's a functional vent. You got air that passes through here on the side, coming through, because in the wind tunnel, Toyota discovered that it made it more efficient cutting through the air. Imagine if everyone's taken a knife to butter, if you got a hard stick of butter, imagine if you had heat up the butter or warmed up the knife, it'll just slice right through, right? Easy. So that's essentially what you're doing with the air. You're cutting it right through so that it is a lot more aerodynamic. Now these side skirts, same concept. They look pretty aggressive, but they help channel the air around the car. Even that little bit right there. Same thing, channeling air. Those are the little things you wouldn't even think of, but they actually serve a purpose. And of course, the back end of that. It has a very mild but rear diffuser. That also has a purpose, because once that air channels underneath the car and comes out, seeing those tiny little fins actually help it disperse from underneath. And instead of having turbulent air, it can actually cut through it a little bit better. First oil change complete.